look at Gambia, nearly half of those presidents who are going to vote you in some way or the other, they have come through that. And then secondly, what complicates it is that these are the same people that you are going to work with once you get to power. So I don't think if they deliberately, if they were not able to provide answers, but they knew for sure that the position they are going for requires the vote of those people who are culprits of this muzzle of a gun. So it's going to be something that it has to be solved at individual level. And remember that at the AUC level, they don't have what much. The best they can offer is to uh, mobilize countries to give troops to stabilize. And that's why it's very, very common to see African reacting to violence rather than being proactive, because AUC is just a coordinating agency between the real power lies with the individual countries. I don't think if they have got any mandate to give a proactive approach to the silencing of guns, and that explains the answers. So I'll wait for my turn to answer, to talk about the debate. I've just answered your question.
Thank you. We're just trying to, to get the meat out of this so that we are not all over. If you want to add something to this before I go to Kinyanjui, your hand has been up.
Yes, I wanted to touch on the issue of silencing the guns. Now, this is a flagship project actually for the African Union, and coming through its Peace and Security Department, which the Peace and Security Council that the Djibouti candidate is sitting on is the one mandated to ensure that, we achieve the targets. And the initial target was to silence the guns within the continent by the year 2020. We definitely missed that target. In fact, between 2020 and right now, 2024, we've seen a couple of the worst wars that have happened globally, not just in Africa, but globally. The worst wars globally actually have been happening in the African continent. And for me, it's been watershed moment, because when we say we have a department for peace and security, we have the council itself, we have a candidate. The Djibouti candidate has been sitting on this peace and security council for the past, I think, 8 years. So I'm not surprised by what he has said, and he has not even addressed this issue, because I know him at a personal level and I know he couldn't deliver. And it's the people who are surprised is actually Kenyans who are vouching for him because they didn't know him. For us who know him, we knew there's nothing new he's going to tell us on that podium. Silencing the guns is about addressing the root causes of conflict. And I was so happy when the candidate of Kenya came through and said, we need to look at, why are we fighting? Are we fighting because of resources? Are we fighting because of limited opportunities? Those are economic opportunities. And he came through and he said, then let us solve the root causes, so that we are not just patching up and bandaging, tunatibu vidonda, but we are not addressing what's actually causing the underlying causes of this conflict. Now, the reason why I would say it was not addressed as much in the debate, number one, we have already said it, there wasn't much time. And the moderators kept rushing the candidates through, so they were not even giving them time to, come through with their thinking, and when they process their thoughts and then to deliver on the audience, that they were not given that time. Number two, it's because, and I would like to just make a little bit of clarity. Some of the countries that have gone through, unconstitutional changes of government, in other words, coups, these countries actually, what the AU Constitutive Act says is that once you come to power through that means, automatically you are suspended from the African Union Commission. What does this mean? It means that the African Union Commission will not engage you in any form of capacity as the Commission. So these countries are not eligible to vote when it comes to the summit that is going to happen in February 2025. So one of the speakers here said that, the candidates could not address because they had the fear that these people will be voting for them. No. These countries, Burkina Faso, Sudan, which is the other country, I think that is Mali, and Niger, and I think also Gabon, these countries are not eligible to vote. So none of these candidates are going to be voted for by any of these countries. They will not even be attending the summit. at the African Union Commission. And not just the summit, they cannot even attend any other meeting, formal meeting that is happening at the African Union Commission, because as it is right now, they have been suspended from the commission itself. Over to you, Obeds.
Eli.
Yes, Obed, if you can hear me, kindly.
Yeah, let me hear what Kinyanjui has to say, because his hand has been up.
Yeah.
Kinyanjui, what's your contribution to the conversation?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, 100%.
Yes. My name is Carrington Kinyanjui. Happy to be here. Africans Rising member. We are collecting signatures. We are still collecting signatures for free movement within the African continent. Very happy to be here. I'm one of those people who was skeptical of Baba, actually actively against Baba's candidacy. But I have to be honest that he has done very well in this debate. This has to be stated. He has answered questions very clearly. In addition to Eve's point that they were not given enough time to deal with this question of silencing the guns, because war in Africa needs at least 20, 30 minutes of discussion. And it would have been preferable, because we have time, to split debates thematically. It would have been better for us to try and understand our continent that way. But another issue has to do with the structural nature of the African Union. The African Union is entirely dependent on the government of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Libya, Tunisia, South Africa, Equatorial Guinea, etc. And therefore, because they're dependent on these governments, they're dependent on our presidents, basically. And they cannot do much against the people who are in power, the African Union. And therefore, there is an opportunity here for us to try and rethink this institution. I am against this, what I call IBCism, this idea that an institution is not functioning properly, we close it down and build a new thing, and then close it down and then build a new thing. It's unhelpful. What we can do is something like make sure, for example, that African Union candidature is open to anyone. And second, the members of parliament of all African Union member states are the ones voting rather than the presidents. Here, you start to divorce the African Union from the direct control of presidents. And because the African Union does not have independent structures to deal with the regional problems, it is unable to deal with security problems structurally. It does not matter who becomes the AU chair next year, these problems will still be local and be unsolved by the African Union. The African Union, when it comes to security, is mostly a goodwill body because of its structure. Now, what can we do? I think the economic cooperation of West African states, a few years before, not last year, during the coup, there was a leader called Bagbo who wanted to stay in power in Ivory Coast against the will of the people, and Alassane Ouattara had won the election. So the economic cooperation of West African, ECOWAS, basically informed Bagbo that they would invade his country from all directions if he does not let go of power. It was made very, very clear to him. He took some few $1 million, as is typical of African politicians, and flew to France and left the country. And since then, Senegal has learned sort of it has developed vaccines, basically, immunity to term extensions. And it was able to get rid of Alassane Ouattara when he himself wanted term extensions for his presidency. This is important. If we get institutions that are literally able to bite, either at the regional level or the economic or the continental level, this will be quite helpful. And divorcing the African Union from the direct control of the presidents would be a nice start. Thank you.
Interesting, Charles. Really, I like that, but that is a Herculean task, trust me, especially the linking it from the heads of states and government. But something to pursue and probably try to ensure that there's that sense of some sort of an independence, if that's what I'm understanding.
So before you can just jump, and Obed, this is for the sake of everyone that is tuning in. Kinyanjui is raising an issue about delinking the presidents from the quote-unquote veto power to elect or select their next in power. I want us to ask ourselves, who finances the African Union? And then, as you answer that question silently or through the chat section, I want you to also respond to question number 2. How do they elect their commission president? You might proceed, Obeds.
Eli, you know this is my pet subject, and interesting.
No, that's a question for the room. So don't answer it. I am waiting to see what people will tell us.
And that's why you cannot just return the microphone to me immediately. But I would like to hear what Western has to speak about this. I have a curiosity to hear what is his take on this. Western, I'll give my opportunity to you to speak and contribute to this conversation.
Western is still a listener. I haven't seen him as a speaker, but we have Ronyo, and I'll probably want to listen to Ronyo first as we try to get Western on the call. Again, guys, I'm waiting for you people to contribute in the comment section or request the mic to those 2 questions I've asked. That who finances the African Union? And number 2, how do they elect or select their commission presidents? I'll go with Ronyo.
Thank you so much. I was receiving several calls. That's why I kept on I saw Evie, and I always disagree with so many things she says. And I also nothing I saw. She joined Eve also to agree with also. So we are always in the same camp with Eve. So I just want to say something regarding the debate. Because when I was listening to Raila, at some point he went and started picking the notes of the guy from Djibouti. The issue of conflict in the region, he was saying about the main reason as to why we have all these. Sorry, he was saying that the main reason we have these conflicts is because of poverty, society issues, the external issue, the external things, also the religion. So, but he was not giving really the solution to that. But you listen to the guy from Djibouti, he was really giving the real solution. He was saying something like the financing. The AU, they don't have the financing to do that.
So that we are on track. In fairness,
yes.
Ronyo.
Yes, please.
The question of silencing the gun, the first candidate to respond was Honorable Raila Odinga, and not the Djibouti Foreign Affairs Minister. And my conclusion, therefore, would be if you are giving us any answers of reference, the person that was referencing should be the candidate from Djibouti. But then again, I'll allow you to prosecute your case.
Yes. Well, let me just finish because I had my notes here. So also, because when I listened to the guy from Djibouti, he was saying the issues of financing. That's the main issue, and also like they don't have a standby force. Like for example, when we have issues of because we cannot do anything with the religions and external forces and all those things unless we have our own force that can maybe, for example, Kenya right now must go says I will not vacate power after somebody else wins, and we can't have African Union coming in because they will come in with what? And then you ask a question: who finances African Union? We know 80% of it comes from the European, right? So there's no way, even these guys, whoever will win, whether Raila, whether the guy from Djibouti or the guy from Madagascar, I don't think there will be any. There will be both of all of them will be the same with the current guy, the current chair of AU right now, because the finances and all that comes from the West. They decide what happens. And I agree with another one. She said that the AU, it was built by the Chinese, so somehow they have a control over it. And so many of these, we have bases we have the base, a lot of the forces from different countries in like right now in Kenya, we almost have 3,000 the guys from the US. Unless we do something like what the country like Djibouti did, and Niger, by deciding to throw away all these people and pushing them out, and we take issues on our hands, because we can do that, and we take responsibility. But most of them are all politicians, of course. I don't think there'll be anything that will happen. So that's my take, and God bless you all.
Eli, I would like to say something, because we all listened to that conversation. And when you listen to the answers that were given, they're totally different. And actually, there was no lifting of notes from any other person. Because what Raila did say is, the causative factors have to be, dealt with. And one of them, he said, it's because of poverty or deprivation, conflict within the societies. There is external influence and religious issues. His solution, according to him, because of unequal development in governance, and he thinks it is fair for people to seek inclusivity through dialogue. That's what I had. When the other candidate from Djibouti, he spoke about lack of political will, and he felt that Africa is not proactive enough in terms of dealing with issues, because there's no stand by force. It's just on paper, but in reality, it's not possible. And the biggest reason is a resource issue. And he says he's very disappointed that the Peace Fund, which is about 400 million, has only given Congo 1 million, another country 1.5 million. And so he also alluded to the fact that there's a lack of unity of purpose. So I am not so sure who lifted any question, any answer, because in my opinion, and unless I've said it wrongly, that's exactly what was said verbatim.
Can I respond to that? Because when I was listening to them, especially the issue, like for example, the issue of saying the issue of making all African country education free, educating the people of Africa, empowering women. That issue was raised by the guy from Djibouti, but later Raila picked that. And again, lastly, before I go, there was an issue about the permanent seat in the Security Council. Raila, he said that he will push for two permanent seats. If the American was trying to push for us so that we can have one, but without veto power. How will that happen? And again, the other thing he said that we have Toyotas in the China. Toyota is not from China; it's from Japan. So he was lying to us there. So thank you so much. God bless you.
You've decided to address a different question, but that's fine. So I'd like to allow Weston, and Weston, thank you for agreeing to come to the microphone. And there's Kenya Dem, we've just come in, just be patient. We'll allow you to speak, and nothing I can see what you've done. Eli, something you'd like to say?
No, as we have a Western joining the mic, and I see a lot of hands that are coming up. Kindly be assured that today is Friday, and most of us are not going to drink. We are drinking and cheering here. So, hatuna haraka, tuko na time. But having said that, Western, I would love for you to listen to this question. I know you are a lecturer. And then after that, you will tell us if the students got the answer right, or if, in their view, they got it halfway right. Let's listen in.
Security Council, that's your question. Whose aspiration to silence guns by 2020, conflicts persist. How will you foster African solutions to ensure effective and durable conflict prevention, management, and resolution? And how do you plan to accelerate Africa's push for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council? Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed candidates, the first to answer this round of questions will be His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga. You have 4 minutes.
So in those 4 minutes, important issues that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga responded to included and not limited to, I'm just trying to get my notes back here. All right. How do we silence the guns? I just lost those notes. But let's have you first. That is, who is this? Western rather. Raila talked about value addition, talked about intra-African trade, that is, I believe, on African resources to spur development. I will come to the silencing of gun, which he talks about the sources of the conflict, which include poverty, ethnicity, external influence, religion to some extent. And the solution, Africa representation at the, that is United Nations Security Council, which according to him has to be a must. We cannot have 55 sovereign nations and we only have, we don't have 2 permanent positions in the Security Council. So I don't know if this is effective enough, or what did you see lacking in the responses? Kindly proceed.
Eli, thank you so much. First, I was rushing to listen to the dialogue, but then along the way, I was caught up in something. Well, the question of silencing the guns, which the AU set for itself to happen by 2020, we're way past that. I didn't think it would happen. I did not, but it was ambitious enough because the AU was supposed to be qualitatively different from the Organization of African Unity. And one of the reasons why OAU was rendered dysfunctional was the principle of non-interference in internal affairs of member states. That you could be Idi Amin, you kill people in Uganda, or there could be genocide in Rwanda, or Daniel Moi in Kenya could brutalize people, and the OAU could do nothing because its definition of sovereignty was absolute. That you, as a head of state or government, whatever you do to your people within your territory, that's an internal affair. It has nothing to do with the regional powers or the international community. But they realized with that kind of approach, then they were abetting massive crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and even genocide. So this African peace and security architecture, this thing that is considered to be the fulcrum of the AU, which includes things like early warning systems or mechanisms. As to whether they work, there's a different question. The panel of the wise, whether it's still in place or not, that's a different question. Peace and Security Commission, whether it's effective enough to respond promptly and timelessly when conflicts erupt on the continent, is a different question. And the standby force, which was supposed to intervene immediately when conflicts begin and restore some semblance of normalcy. We don't have that. What is the reason? The reason is that Africa's peace and security architecture is in the hands of external actors. We don't have the money to fund our peace initiatives. We don't have the money to police Africa's troubled spots. At some point, Thabo Mbeki said that the Southern African countries were willing to commit troops to Eastern DRC to go and intervene and restore order. But imagine there was no aircraft to airlift those troops to Eastern Congo. Americans are to step in and lend them an aircraft. And he found that extremely embarrassing, but that is the case. Even in Somalia, the AMISOM that has turned into that ATMIS, that transition mission, it is the European Union and the Americans who are funding and providing logistical support, reconnaissance and drones. So we don't take charge of our own security architecture. Why? Because AU member states usually don't pay their dues. And that is left to what we would call anchor states, South Africa, Nigeria, and before Libya. Before Gaddafi was dead, Libya was one of the biggest funders of the AU. And of course, that was checkbook diplomacy. He got things in return. So when he was taken out, a huge, funder was knocked out. Who came in? The European Union, the Americans, the Chinese, name it, the usual suspects. Now, when they give you money, they dictate to you their priorities. You can't tell them these are our priorities. So in Ethiopia, for instance, if you want to see how ineffective the AU is, and especially this peace and security architecture of theirs, the conflict in Tigray region, that northern part of Ethiopia, broke out, ran its full course at the seat of the AU in Addis. AU said nothing. AU did not intervene. It ran its full course. Only external actors were concerned with that issue. Cameroon, as we speak now, it has undergone civil war since I think 2015 or thereabout, between the Anglophone and the Francophone. AU has not pronounced itself on that conflict as we speak. It's left to run its full course. So, yes, poverty, inequalities, bad governance, lack of political will, all those things fall within this panoply of our shortfalls as far as taking charge of our peace and security is concerned. But the biggest question is lack of political will. Because even if the money was there, political will is not there. Because what AU has inherited from the OAU is this propensity amongst African heads of state and government to stand by one another, regardless. That has not gone. So the principle of non-indifference within the AU Constitutive Act, which was to replace that one of non-interference, whereby African heads of state and government are supposed to hold one another accountable through mechanisms such as African peer review and a whole host of things. These early warnings mechanisms, they're not working because we keep quiet. Whatever is happening in Ethiopia, whatever is happening in Uganda, whatever is happening in Kenya, Kenya's political actors and Kenya themselves, let's hope they will solve it. If they don't, let's hope the regional actors will step in. And when they step in, usually it is on the side of the incumbent. They don't step in as impartial arbiters. They step in with the intention of securing the incumbent, who is one of their own. So that is the enduring failing of the AU, which it has inherited from the OAU. Which way forward? What I will tell you is that whether Raila Odinga gets the slot or the Djibouti candidate or the one from Madagascar, the issues bedeviling the AU are beyond their capacity to resolve. One, Raila is right, the external interference in African internal affairs is still big. First, the French interference in Africa is legendary, and it has not gone anywhere. And that's why earlier as I spoke, predominantly the people who have headed the AU secretariat have been drawn from formerly French colonies in Africa. The British-speaking countries have been on the periphery. Other than we had Salim Ahmed Salim from Tanzania, and then before there was a Nigerian who served for a short stint in the 80s, and then the Ethiopian, the founding. And then recently, South Africa bulldozed itself into imposing Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, wife of former President Jacob Zuma, as the AU Commission chair. But the intention was not to take charge of the AU. Zuma was using the AU to project her former wife for politics back home, was introducing her to the international community in preparation for elections back in South Africa, so that he thought she would win and succeed him, and then she would have no problem introducing herself to these prominent actors on the international stage. So this AU thing is used for domestic politics, not for what it was meant to serve, which means to ensure that there's peace and stability on the continent. As I learned, what about the Africa's permanent seat at the UN Security Council? Well, that argument is valid for the simple reason that over 80%, you would even put it at 90, of all the security issues before the United Nations Security Council are usually about Africa. And therefore, the logic is that why do you talk about Africa without Africa's representation at the United Nations Security Council? Secondly, the United Nations Security Council is a reflection of the post-World War power equation. The Allied forces are the ones that ended up forming the UN Security Council. The Global South, including Africa, and particularly South Africa, which is very prominent as far as this charge is concerned, is arguing that that power equation has changed. The global countries like Brazil, countries like India, China, they are increasingly becoming assertive, and even Nigeria, and years to come, they will be very prominent in terms of the sizes of their economies, and therefore their say as far as global matters concerned. Therefore, you cannot have what you would call an inclusive global community with exclusion of the global South. And when the UN Security Council was formed, most of these countries were still under colonial yoke and stuff like that. So that's a compelling charge. But the question is, if you are co-opted under the UN Security Council by the Americans, by the British, by the French, the Chinese, to what extent will you exercise same might or power as they do? The answer is highly unlikely. They will still call the shots, and they are likely to include you only to tick the boxes and to appear to be inclusive, but you won't really call the shots, you won't really exercise a lot of influence. Therefore, the other question is, who will represent Africa? If there were slots, 1 or 2 slots, will it be South Africa? But South Africa is not Africa enough. Its critics argue that it is a Eurocentric Africa in Africa, so they can't represent Africa. Will it be Nigeria? Others argue, well, most populous African nation states, the largest economy on the continent, very vibrant, but extremely dysfunctional. Will they represent Africa? Egypt, for instance, in north of Africa. Well, these are Arabs who relate to Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, when it suits them. When it doesn't suit them, they consider themselves part of the Middle East. Will it be Kenya? Will it be? So the question of who will represent Africa, who will take those slots, has yet to be resolved. What is my take? My take is that none of the permanent UN Security Council members, the P5, is amenable to the idea of expanding that body. Why? Because power, once you expand power, you dilute it. When you make it exclusive, that's when you can exercise it optimally and police the world. The UN Security Council is not to maintain the international peace and security, is to advance and propagate the interests politically, economically, militarily, name it, of the Americans, of the French, of the British, of the Chinese, and of the Russians. It's not for international peace and security. much as that is what is stated to be. So, as I land, Eli, this debate is like a presidential debate. In the US, in Kenya, or other jurisdictions where such debates are held, hardly do you derive much from them, for the simple reason that geopolitics will play a much bigger role in who eventually emerges victorious come February 2025. Canvassing and how you perform in the debate, maybe it may be interesting, especially to your supporters, but may not carry much weight. That's my take.
Thank you so much, Western. I am grateful that we gave you the opportunity to speak because you've really highlighted the issues well. And I'd like to say, especially on the issue of the Security Council, probably as a long shot might not happen. But back to you, Eli. Let's hear what the others have to say.
Thank you very much, Obed. And that was quite eloquent from you, Weston. I think it was needed for you to be able to level out everything that was discussed. And we do appreciate looking at it from all fronts, politically speaking, diplomatically, and the real issues that African continent is facing. I'm going to clear up the hands that are up, including mine, and then we'll have Kenya following. So let's go with you, Eve, and then Kenya.
Thank you, Eli. Just picking up from where Weston has left it, and I think he's really made good points with regards to the interest and the geopolitics that play out in these multilateral bodies, the AU and the UN. And it's really important that for us, even as we look at whichever candidate we are supporting to go into these institutions, what drives the decisions in these institutions mostly are from a point of interest. What do the big players, what are the interests? For instance, when it comes to the African Union Commission, you had Ronyo say, correctly so, that 80% of the budget of the AU and the Commission itself is funded by the European Union. So when they come to the AU and they give you the money, they don't give you the money out of the goodness of their hearts. No, they don't give you the money because they are feeling very philanthropic. No, they come in with their conditions. They give you the money. For instance, Weston mentioned about a project within the African Union Commission, the African Peace and Security Architecture. Actually, this is one of the biggest projects that African Union has. And to our disappointment, it is funded 100% by the European Commission. So what do we expect when such things happen? When we hear that some of our presidents onto the platform and they say, you know what, we need to seize the presidents in Africa, the member states, the ones who sit at the summit, the one who makes decisions, they need to cede power and give the African Union Commission power to implement some of the decisions that the president passed at the summit. When you hear Raila Odinga saying that 92% of the decisions that are passed at the summit, at the AUC, they're not implemented. There is a reason why he's putting that across the table, because you know what? These decisions have been deliberated by the member states. They have been passed by the heads of states. And when it comes to implementation, nothing is done. I have seen it firsthand. I was sitting at the Peace and Security Department when the war in Congo, there was a resurgence of the M23. And I remember the Peace and Security Council within the African Union, they passed a resolution, did a communique, and said, we are going to remove this amount of money from the peace fund within the African Union to ensure that they bridge in and they bring in forces and they're able to get their logistics and they're able to pay their soldiers and things like that. Guess what? By the time that resolution was passed, to the time that some little money was given to this force, a lot of time had been wasted. The conflict had raged. So many people were displaced. There were so many deaths. And then and the impression is that this regional force was not able to do what it was meant to do, to go and restore peace. But then how could they do so without the financial support or delayed financial support? So really, when we look at it, the geopolitics and the inefficiencies within our multilateral systems are the one causing us problems. Now, when we go to the UN Security Council, when you are talking about membership to the Security Council with no veto power, to me, that is pure nonsense. You have gone there to be a chair or a table or a wall clock or an insect in the room. When you do not have the power to make decisions or to vote, or when one state has the power to make a veto power, then it defeats the whole purpose. The Security Council has been voting again and again. I think I lost touch. They have been voting on the issue of Gaza for a ceasefire. Once the resolution is placed on the table, either Russia vetoes, the next round when it comes, it is America that vetoes. A Security Council with 15 members, but one state is able to veto all the work that has been done. That is what we call a non-functioning organization. It is either all the security members have veto power or none at all has veto power. That is the only way it is going to work. And if that is Africans, we have no business sitting at the Security Council, because there, again, interests play out. If the interests that you're putting on the table, if the resolution you're putting on the table is against the British, what do? They raise up their hand, they veto. The whole resolution goes down. If it is against the Russian interest, again, Russia vetoes. If it's against the Chinese, the same thing happens. So does it really work? Is it really functioning? The answer is clear. It is not functioning at all. Just a little point when it comes to silencing the guns. Silencing the guns, again, it's a big issue within the African Union Commission because it has not worked. The initial target of 2020 was ambitious, but then there was no enough goodwill, nor resources, nor expertise within the African Union Commission to bring about and to hit that target. So what are we saying? Even when you're looking at, the chairperson of the commission, the elections in February 2025 is not about just the chairperson. It's an election for the entire commission, which also includes the 6 commissioners. Now, all of the commissioners are due to retire. It's only one commissioner who is eligible to rerun for the office. And interestingly enough, this commissioner is the Commissioner for Peace and Security, the one that we are discussing right now. He is a gentleman from Nigeria. He has performed dismally. Since his ascension to power, we have seen conflict mushrooming everywhere in Africa, including in Addis Ababa. I was in Addis Ababa in 2021, in November 2021, when they declared a state of emergency, when the war was coming to Addis by the TPLF, that is the Tigray Front. They were marching into Addis to take over power. If it were not for the intervention of the Turkians, who gave the administration in Addis Ababa drones to deter this army from getting into the city, right now we would be talking about a different case. It would have been the case of either Mali or Burkina Faso, happening at the headquarters of the African Union. So what am I saying is, we have major failures, major misses. And what do we need to do? We need to reform. We actually need to reform. And I think Kenya is standing very well positioned as it has taken over the reforms of the African Union Commission from Kagame, from Rwanda. This is why it would be very good for me. I think it would be very important to combine the convening authority of Kenya having the reforms table, as well as Kenya having the chairperson of the commission, to drive the changes that are needed within the commission itself. First, let us implement the decisions that have been made. If 90% of decisions have not been implemented, then the people sitting at the African Union, what exactly are they doing? What exactly are they doing? Every country in Africa gives their allocation to the African Union Commission. We, as Kenya, have our own contribution based on our GDP. We have a certain amount of money that we contribute to the African Union Commission. And I think, if I'm not wrong, we are either number 4 or number 5 in terms of the amount of money that we give to this commission. So we should be asking for accountability. Is that money just paying out salaries to people who are sitting and not implementing decisions? Those are the things we should be asking. And what then should we do if we have an inefficient commission with no expertise within there? People just sitting and earning salaries and getting there as a means of retirement, and feeling flamboyant. Those are the questions we should be asking. We need to take reforms in its original meaning. When we say reforms, we are acknowledging that it is not working and we are putting in measures to make it work. I think I would land it there and hear from the other contributors. Thank you.
Eve is talking about reforms, and when we speak about reforms, it's an old cliche in our political and even governance conversation, because it's there on paper just to look beautiful and stylish and looks like we speak French and English. But then again, it's not me to decide on this talk. Let's find out what the rest of you think. Nothing. In Najua, you have a lot of things to say. Can we clear you before we have Mkenya?
Okay, not that I have a lot to say, but I'll see what I can leave out. First, I wanted to address Ronyo. I don't know whether he's still here. Yes, he is. Ronyo, we agreed in the earlier space that we're going to disagree based on facts and yeah, I think we agreed on facts. It's true. Baba talked about Raila talked about Toyota in Japan. I think anybody can make such an error, so we shouldn't blow it out of context and give him for real, and give him credit on that. We shouldn't split hairs on that. As we are discussing the AU, I've just thought back because I've been to Addis Ababa. I've been to Ethiopia and about 3 cities in Addis. I don't think, by the way, that this thing is going to bring any value to any country for a simple reason. Do you know the level of illiteracy in Ethiopia is extremely. This war Eve is talking about, they were being pitched against each other by the Americans because they didn't want them to the dam. And I remember I was among the campaigners, activists against that particular war. And even because they were saying, oh, there's this community that we're trying to, they're dying of hunger, and they were showing pictures of people emaciated for lack of food. And the Mr. Abiy said, no, UN is not going to donate food here. And after a lot of pressure, he positioned his military in civilian clothes to receive the food. What was shocking, after UN had dropped off the food and his army that was hiding came up after the food had been fully offloaded, they were tearing the bags. And I think I have videos on my TL, but this is, I think 2020, 2021, around that time. They had hidden guns inside the food. And he was asking, is this the food donation you're talking about? So there's no goodwill from the Western country in silencing the guns in Africa, because the best way to solve conflict is to avoid it in the first place. But what do? They pitch countries, communities against each other. Then they find a reason to put in guns. We've seen that with Somali. We've seen that with Kenya. How comes like the Western embassies are always warning us about impending terror attack? Why can't we stop it before it happens? It tells you that is how they attack countries. For example, Burkina Faso, Traore, when he's I think on the 20-something attempt on his life, and when he asked the American bases to leave, they said, oh, you're going to be attacked by the militia groups. He said, we understand this game. He called the community and he told them, you know what? Account for your brothers and sisters, because because these people usually use the local community, people from the community to attack. And if you can see what is happening in Congo, it's exactly the same script. And after 2 weeks, true, the militias attacked, but in 2 weeks, he had silenced them. And after that, he held another community and meeting and said, I think the people heard me. So as we look into African Union, I think we come to a conclusion that absolutely nothing of value will trickle down into the country. We have a mandate to protect our country from falling apart. We have a mandate to speak up against even that Security Council, because the two friends of Africa is China and Russia. The decision to attack Addis around that TPLF war was leaked. The audios were leaked by China and Russia. And during that particular meeting, they voted against that invasion. But the West decided, because the majority of votes, UK, France, America, I think Germany stayed out of that particular vote of attacking Ethiopia, simply because they were building the dam. This brings us to a point where we need to be woke. We need to continue agitating against Western influence. And even on the presidential candidate we finally settled for, should understand how to protect the nation from external interference. After this debate tonight, I honestly don't think whoever gets is going to change anything in Africa. But it was a good learning curve on how we should run debates for presidential candidates. I yield the mic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nothing. You're saying it was a good learning curve. We have seen different debates, especially in Kenya when it comes to the presidential debates. We have seen some who will equally say as revealing some dirty secrets, tough questions. But when we look at what happened today at the Addis Ababa debate, that is Mjadala Africa, it is claimed that there was a special, organization, should I say, or committee that sat down, came up with questions, and they were sealed in envelopes. You only get to know about these questions once they arrive on that desk. But I also love the fact that these debaters had some notes they were, flipping through tactically to just let you know I had come prepared. The Mwakenya was there. So I'm wondering if Mkenya gave them the Mwakenya. Let's find out from Kenya. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you guys?
We are very well, save for you. Let's say, how do you look at the AUC debate answers? Did they answer the critical questions that Africans were looking to listen to and have, a view of what the candidates will be resolving? Kenya.
Okay, I'll give an overall overview of what I've gathered from the debate, and I'll only focus on the two candidates. I did get much from the Madagascar candidate, but it was good. I think what happened for people who have not been, having a very good understanding of what has been happening, especially of AU. I think today we got a chance to have an idea of what could be done and what has been happening. So I'll pick a few things that I felt like they were actionable, and what was so pronounced is we've not been solving our own problem. That is that's one of the things that I caught from the debate, because if we've been funded 2.7 billion euros in order even to facilitate for our security, that's the only funding that we've been getting. Then the other commitment that has been made by the African countries, and they are not meeting it. There was something that Mahmoud talked about, is not going to do a sanction on the countries, but is going to advocate for it. Now the biggest, what I learned from that whole thing is, it's an idea of what could go better that we picked somewhere, and we think we can make things better. Then when it comes to the implementation aspect of it, it's they sounded defeated, because you could hear when Mahmoud talked about the aspect of the goodwill is what is lacking. You get, so we can overpromise, but the goodwill is what is lacking. I mean, I've seen how EU operates. I mean, having lived in Central Europe for a minute, yes, there are those small internal conflicts that happen in terms of, you find like some parts of Czech, like in the Czech Republic, it's underdeveloped. Some parts of the Hungary, they are underdeveloped, but there is that common pole that gives them that thrive. Yes, there are a few pointers we can steal from our neighbors, from other people who've done that level of implementation and they are succeeding. But what we've done is we picked the framework and we decided, yes, it sounds good on paper, but it's a framework that we are not going to implement. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we've learned overall from the debate. Then the other thing is, for us to have that merit of being given us having veto powers at the UN Security Council, there is one thing that we should have learned, is that we need to start internally to a point whereby we are well organized and we can offer that, we can speak from a point of authority, and then when it gets to that point is we are not begging for it. And that is what one of the candidates there, Mahmoud, insisted on. Like, he provided a three-way solution. I can't remember point by point, but he gave three-way solution. But overall, what he was trying to speak is, can we organize ourselves first before we can be in a position? Because all the powers operate globally. It's based on military resources and military resources and advancement, both technological advancement. We have the resources, but we lack the organizational aspect of things for Africa to be able to transform. I think that is something that we've picked very clearly. So that is something that I felt like they've made good points. It was, if you ask me, it wasn't even more like a debate. I went there kusikiza at an angle. Mimi, I went there nikiwa na my own, how do we call it, biasness. But now from it was more of like a learning point. It wasn't a point whereby the candidates also attack each other and everything. It was a point for them to educate us on what happens really at AU specifically. What we've heard is that we have a very long way to go. And from what I've heard from the candidates, I will say it's not what the candidates can do. It is what we African countries are willing to do to take the role to take the responsibility of solving our problems. Then on the last one, and I think this was one of the most important one, when the question of the mineral, the resources and everything was asked, there is something that I don't know whether everyone caught this. When everyone was talking about, how we should allow this free trade amongst ourselves, the tariffs, the barriers as the challenges, you know what one of the candidates said? One of the candidates said, that's not even the biggest challenge that we are having. Let's focus on first protecting the resources. We don't care whether you are Uganda. We don't care whether you are Kenya. But who is stealing your resources? Forget about the licenses, the internal fees that Uganda can impose on Kenya, Kenya can impose on this. And no. Those are not our biggest enemy. Our biggest enemy, it is the one who is taking our resources when we are all fighting. Forget about that. That was it. Let's start by protecting our resources. Then the rest of the things shall follow. So I think from that we can clearly understand that if Africa wants to grow, the only thing that we have is the resources. And if we have the resources, then let's first protect the resources from not fellow Africans, no, from the other key players who we are supposed to compete against. So I think that was very clear. And that's all I wanted to say. About all the other biasness and the pettiness that we can all discuss, it's totally unnecessary. I think today was a learning point for every one of us. And I think we can maximize this time to see what solution we can create and what responsibility we can take as Africans to start building internally. We start building internally. Forget about the tax that has been imposed by Tanzania. It won't make any sense. There won't be any resources in Africa if, when we are fighting over tariffs, instead of protecting our resources, Adani is in Zambia, while they are taking all the copper and the coal. These other guys are in different countries. These other guys are taking these oils and they are taking it out of Africa. So I think that was very clear, and I would like to land there.
Wow, thank you very much, Mkenya. Mkenya says today it's not about being petty. talking of Petim Kenya, you know, before you highlighted some of the things you've learned from this conversation this evening, I got a very interesting debate, a chat coming through our DMs. And there's an individual that is very unhappy because looks like this is a Raila space. So if you are here and you feel this is a Raila space, we will advise you to drop off. But if you think we are having critical conversations on the issues being raised at a continent level, you are in the right room. Again, the candidates that were showing up on that platform include Raila Odinga, who is from Kenya. We had Mahmoud Ali from Djibouti, and we had Mr. Double R or Richard from Madagascar. And therefore, we are evaluating the conversation based on the presentations of these candidates. Just before I gave you the opportunity, Obet, Kenya was asking, or rather trying to find some of the critical issues that Mohamud was discussing about, and I believe included are not limited to political will of the countries in silencing the guns. How proactive are they rather than reactive? The standby forces, which responds in the event of finances. And the issue here is there is no financial resources that are put upfront in the event there has to be an intervention. Went ahead to say that there needs to be an access to the peace fund, which is totaling at about 400 million USD, gave a bit of a figure that has been spent in Congo, for example. I think it was $1 million, if I'm not mistaken, $1 million, on the unity of purposes between the neighboring countries. And I'm just going to give a quick bite here from Mahmoud's presentation, and then we can proceed rather.
Up to 2.7 billion euros. Now, financial resources are critical. Why should we have the money so that we can operate on crisis ground on the continent? Because without money, we cannot deploy our standby forces. Without money, even the committee of mediators cannot go and discuss with the stakeholders. They sometimes wait for the tickets, the per diems, days and days and days. It's very critical that the peace fund, in which we have $400 million, that the Commission and the PRC, get to the compromise situation where that money could be used for peace on the continent. So far, only the interest of the 400 millions are used. And I'm really shameful when I say, DRC have been given 1 million for peace, issues through this fund. And they have given to, I don't know, another country 1.5 million. It has to change. We need the authority from the member countries so that we can use this money, the $400 million, to keep peace on our continent.
And that's where I carried it off. And I think it covers some of the issues Kenya was addressing. Now, I want to try and start wrapping off the conversation. Looks like no newcomers want to contribute to the talk, but we'll be able to highlight some of the comments you've made in the comment section. Thank you once again for making time to be here. We are looking at the review of the African Union Chair debate, which was hashtag Mjadala Africa. Did it get to answer the critical questions we are looking to respond to as a continent? And what do you make of the speakers, rather should I say, the candidates presented? Do we see ourselves voting for the Djibouti candidate, or are we going to vote Kenya, or are we going to be Team Madagascar? But on the onset, the Madagascar candidate was very, interesting enough to admit that according to social media, there are only 2 candidates. So I'm wondering, anyone that says social media is not a media and they are noisemakers, why are political players at such a level concerned about what is being said on social media? Nisawa to Obed.
2 things. The people who speak the way they speak sometimes have to try and pander up to their master, and they are not, shocked by that. What I would like to point out is that as well, the debate was not really up to the level you expect, but we have given the dynamics around it. We must appreciate that the elements of regional bodies and multinational organizations have vested interests in some areas and particular things to achieve. Unfortunately, and this is what a lot of us need to understand, the African Union does not fund itself fully because member states do not a majority have met have done their bit to ensure that they fund the AU as should be. And because of the interest that there are, external influence is so great. And unfortunately for Africa, we've been divided along different colonial masters: the Anglophone, the Lusophone, the the Francophone, and that becomes part of our Achilles heel in trying to unite Africa. So there's a lot that we say and write about and say things on paper, but when it comes to actualizing them, it's nearly impossible because of the divisions that stand. I like what Weston said. Actually, Eve said about, if talk to it, that Africa, the influence of the colonial masters remains, and France is actually pervasively very powerful and influential. Look at the currency in West Africa, the CFA, and so many other things. So there's so much that Africa needs to get rid of. When are we going to speak one language? When you look at Agenda 2063 and the ambitions are lofty, is that possible? Is it practical? No. Until Africans take matters into their own hands and choose to be practical and pragmatic and look at where are we, what is our problem, resource-wise, human resource-wise, natural resources and human resource-wise, and allow each other to move forward. Difficult, moving within Africa, for instance. I struggle to get my clients to Cape Verde. It's so difficult sometimes to get people from Angola to, because in Africa, not many airlines and there are so many restrictions. What we need to do, remember, we are one people. We have a responsibility to protect what we call our own resources. But even if that is the case, internally within our own African countries, like let's say the state of Kenya, we also have subdivisions of our problems. We have tribalism, ethnicity, negative ethnicity, and stuff like that. We must work on ourselves. We must understand that there's a bigger picture. We are the meal on most of the people's tables, especially the other continents. Europe, China has realized Africa is a good source of, whatever is done. And we cannot even argue and talk about the UN Security Council because some of the things that you're required to have to be able to sit on that level, and again, we don't set the rules, it requires some sort of power and influence that comes from military power, a large size. Africa is a huge landmass. It has resources, but we can never be united. Oh, no, sorry, not saying we can never be united, but we need to find a way to be united to be able to address that problem. Speak in one language. I've listened to our president speak loftily and do so little, especially, and contradict even what he does because he's a blue-eyed boy for the West. And that has made him a bit of a person who yaps a bit more, and the rest of the continent looks at him and thinks he's not genuine. In Rwanda, we have a president who is very particular, but then, and very strong and forceful. He doesn't like France, we know for obvious reasons, but at the same time, he's working for the West. Remember, he trained in America for a long time, and there's so much that he does that is not in the interest of the African people. So unless we have leaders who are, not selfish, driven to the agenda of making Africa great and making a difference, we have a long way to go. And we must learn to fund ourselves so that we can have a say and control on what happens to us. Until then, we will have these conversations and it may not make a big difference. But then you can never give up because Rome was not built in a day. It takes time and it takes progress and conscious effort to be able to achieve that. I feel I've said more than I should have, and I should allow other people to speak as we look at closing this space, Eli.
Thank you very much, Obed. So let's get quickly to your comments in the chat section. I see we have Anthony Omoro who says it's doubtful that Kenyans who are disgruntled by Raila candidacy because of his competency level It is the perceived betrayal of the Gen Z cause. According to him, it is not that Kenyans were really against Raila, it's because they felt conned out after the Gen Z Mandamano. Raila said that the 2020 was not achieved and guns are blazing everywhere. He mentioned countries. Now we are in 2024. And therefore, according to Waletunda, Africa needs guns to sort out their dictators. Well, that is interesting. We also have, I want to read through Ifan's submission here in the chat section. Says Djibouti AUC choice has emerged top. This is why basically a person with an understanding of any area has a lots of example to give and relate. That's who Muhammad Ali of Djibouti displayed. For me, he has taken home all the four thematic areas. His confidence is above board. That's according to Ifan. We also have Marabu who says he's supporting a Kenyan because we are Kenyans, negative nationalism like tribalism. Must we look at the merit issue? Many in the north are pointing to the academic requirements. Facts are stubborn. And we also have, let's see, what new do we have here? Djibouti candidate English has decided to go on course, regurgitating Raila's points. Quite interesting. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. This is according to Eve. Pan-African 254 says, if African Union keeps locking out other nations, Burkina Faso, Mali, and etc., based on Western foreign policy, then it's all a waste of time. We can't continue having external influence, making decisions on behalf of the continent, remaining toothless is no longer a discussion. And according to Ndolo, assembly plants in China. Remember, some Apple products are designed in California, assembled in China. Cheap, skilled labor, according to him. And we also have Fraud Nur Ali, who says, the AUC has faced criticism for appearing to treat the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, as equals during the conflict and the mediation. And therefore, yes, EU has a lot of fingers being pointed at them. And last sample here, we have Cross-Party Democracy Forum, who says the reform agenda is deliberately not addressed well. According to him, there was much that should have been discussed. However, we fell short of that. Because Kenya branch says the African Union should strengthen the African peer review mechanism to include comprehensive assessments of member states' compliance with the principles of sovereignty, non-interference, and self-determination. Having said that, I think it's quite an interesting evening here, and the fact that the debating teams, and that is, of course, from Kenya, we had Raila Odinga, Djibouti, we had Muhammad Ali, and from Madagascar, we had His Excellency Mr. Richard, telling us that it was a non-starter for him because sababu social media has already decided that he does not exist in the race. However, throwing a jab at Djibouti and Kenya, asking how can we be discussing about silencing of guns, yet there is or there exist bases, that is foreign bases in Africa, and most likely the finger was pointing at Djibouti and the Kenyan candidate. Having said that, I just want
only that he forgot that even in his own country there is that. So it's just a weird thing to think.
Is it not just weird, as you call it? Because we're looking at Africa being independent. And I asked us earlier on, why and who finances Africa? Why? It's because apparently you felt those questions were hapakule news. They didn't really touch on the nerves of the continent, or rather the heartbeat of the African people. And number two, there was also the effect that we are talking about financing our own institutions, but the African Union 80% financed by the European Union. Remember, the European Union has 27 member states. Africa, on the other hand, is boasting of 55 sovereign countries who are members of the African Union. And these 55 head of states will be getting into a room secretly, decide on who is going to be the next chair of the African Union. And we are talking about when that happens, that is a vote on Kenya, Kenya will be coming in with Raila Odinga. If they vote on Djibouti, we'll be having Muhammad Ali. And if they vote on Madagascar, that second demo for that candidate has been a problem to me. But it's Richard James. If that is the case, therefore, we'll be having it going to Madagascar. But interesting times here because Africa wants to be independent. Africa is looking to look into intra-Africa infrastructure, trade, increasing the minimum from the current one, or at least minimum of 18 to 20%. But that is not enough to stabilize the region. Asked, what is the biggest resource? Our candidate went ahead to say, well, it is the minerals. But there was a quick checkmate from Djibouti, which said, don't think about the minerals. It's the resources who is a human resource. I think that's not Raila alikosa kwa sababu president ameiongelea sana. How could he miss that? The final submission. Who do we have online? Obed.
I almost went off. I think let's have, should we be looking at how to conclude the space? I think so. I would start with nothing. Come back to Kenya in that order.
I think nothing is on leave. Let's have Mkenya.
Let's have Mkenya.
I'm not on leave. I'm trying to give Mkenya the opportunity, and then I'll come in last.
Oh, okay. If you don't say, we won't know
Okay.
because they had queued you. But it's our Mkenya. Looks like nothing has a soft spot for you.
No, like wow. Nothing has said she will come last. Which is okay. I mean, of course, they always come first, and but I also like having ladies first as well. So it's confusing, but anyway, it works for all of us.
Wednesday, concentrate. Wednesday, concentrate.
Okay, okay. This is what I'm going to say. Whoever thought that this was a Raila space, sorry to them, because yeah, I mean, you've seen me speak here, and I think I was very biased when I was walking to that debate because my candidate, okay, of course, felt by betrayal of what I felt like was a betrayal of Raila to the Gen Zs, me being one of the Gen Zs. But when I went there, it completely turned. And it became something else. Became a point where, this is the first time I'm realizing Kenyans are so interested. And when I'm talking about Kenyans, I'm talking about like the general population. Me, I've never known when these elections are happening. These are things that I see on a gazette or probably on a TV. Oh, we've elected this one for AU. But now at this point, it has become a very interesting space. And it is a space of, things start with a conversation before we get there. And I want Kenyans and also Africans we start forgiving ourselves and start understanding that some of the democracies or some of the countries, some of the monarchs, some of the kingdoms are way older than us, and they've organized themselves over a very long time. They've not been able to achieve this because when you look at when even the conversation of EU started, it's a long conversation, and look at how it has evolved over time. So I think we should learn to forgive ourselves, and we sort out on the aspect of what do I think it would go to, in terms of what sounded like actionable solutions, what sounded like what we could do instead of the generalization aspect of it. I think Djibouti have a better chance at that. But how they are placed based on how many military camps you have there, and also the Eritrea around Eritrea and that section of the continent, it raises a lot of questions. When it comes to Kenya, I think Kenyans, we failed the integrity test over and over. And since the candidate for Madagascar, the only point I feel like the candidate for Madagascar missed is all the other candidates have been traversing the continent to get. Mahmoud was here in Kenya, Raila was in Senegal, and so many other different countries. And Mahmoud has done the same. But the candidate for this one, nilimuona tu time ya poster. Nilimuona tu kwa poster. So I'll land there. Thank you. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mkenya. I almost thought you're turning to making a speech. Nothing, KE?
Yeah. Hi, Mukenya. You know, Mukenya, when he first came on space, he talked about his animals and the fact that he comes from Sekuru. And I know where that is. Give me a soft spot for him. And I'm happy to see him.
Kabila, ukabila.
I'm not from Sekuru myself. So I'm not Ukabila. I'm from very far. Akuna Ukabila. I'm bridging the divide on tribalism. And I agree with him on a few issues. But I need to also address space. No, it was Redemptor space where one of the issue he raised was about Kalonzo candidature, but I was with someone who told me Kalonzo might be our sure bet out of this. Anyway, about this today's performance, I don't think, I honestly, Obed, they said we should get emotions out of transition. And that broke my heart, by the way. That really broke my heart. But from how this person had run for office, she failed, but then she showed me how to go about it. And the fact that majority of us don't have voters card and IDs. And she was saying if people had voters card, then Baba would be taking it home with 20 million votes. So she was basically highlighting we need to be very careful. We're on the right path, but we are looking at it. We need to open our eyes wider and hear people who are being. So, and she said we shouldn't look for saints in politics; they don't exist. But we can look for people probably we can share ideas with. And yeah, a conversation I want to have with Mkenya and others. About today's performance, I don't think there was a wow factor. I can't say Raila lost. I was happy that he highlighted that other African countries don't pay their dues to AU, and that he would want that to happen. About connectivity, Africa connectivity, he had this interview in the US, and I think that is where a decision was made that Raila should not become the president. Yes, he talked about that before 2022. He was interviewed by CNN, and the minute that Africa is connected, we can do business within ourselves. There's enough market for that. Another thing, I can't remember who was talking about. Oh, it was Western, about the Middle East. We lost a moment. Remember when there was this expose about government to government oil? When things didn't look good for the US, a meeting was initiated by, it was Emirati, after they had talked to other Arabic countries, and the president of Kenya was looped in. And they were saying, in the event that we were to unite Middle East and Africa, we have a superpower that can stand against the US and UK. But when he came, after that meeting, he snitched to the US. That is why he was being feted. If you remember that meeting he had, yes. And that is where Emirates decided to leak the government to government deal and said it didn't exist. So we need to be careful. We need to hear different perspectives, but I don't think there was a winner tonight. It has made it very obvious that there's an other hand controlling AUC. Because when you think about it, China has interest, the US has interest. This whole silencing the gun, why should we silence guns in 2063 when Africa has never invaded? African countries don't invade other countries. The issues are always within the borders, and a few African countries are used by the West to attack other countries. Like, for example, we know Museveni has been used to destabilize Southern Sudan.
Nothing else we need to land.
And I learned, and I thank you for the opportunity. It was a good engagement, but I don't think there was a winner tonight, and we should focus on Kenyan politics moving forward. I thank you, everyone. I've learned a lot from each one of you. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much. I propose you change your name to something. While at it, I'd like to allow Marabu, she has a name, nothing, but she has a lot to say. So I think she should change it to something to say. Let me give Ronyo, then Marabu talk.
Thank you so much, Albert.
Ronyo, I hope I don't have to interrupt you, please. So I'll give you 2.5 minutes.
No problem. 2.5 minutes is more than enough. So I just want to agree and disagree with some of my friends here, including Nothing, because we had a winner, very good. I mean, the Djibouti guy did kill the show very well. He said so many good things. My take is what I agree with most of you is that I don't think this AU the AU position will change anything, because this is my own belief and my own after checking and seeing and listening. Raila's win will be good for Russia and China, and the Djibouti guys win. It will be good for Western countries. So apart from that, we as Africans, we somehow doomed. I don't know who Nani Alitroga, because majority of the countries, even if we are saying we are sovereign, I don't think there is anything like sovereign in Africa. I was in China, and in China, if you ask people, they say Fejo what it means is a country without nothing. So they for them they believe Africa, and for Africans who have worked in China, you ask them, most of them they had to. You can't say you come from Kenya, you can't say you come from Uganda. Mostly you can only say you come from one country, South Africa, because most of them they don't know how to read, so they can't. They won't know if they look at the passport, they don't know which country you're coming from. So some of the Africans will say we are coming from Bahamas, we are coming from this Caribbean country or South Africa, but you can't mention all the other African country, including Kenya, because they believe those countries they are only animals who live there. So whether it is they all something there, so none of them has any interest for Africans. So and most of them being the ones funding us, most of them being the ones taking our minerals and all our resources. I don't think they have any good intention, and probably even today's debate, that was just a show to entertain Africans. At the end of the day, they still control the show. They still make sure that they are giving us all these finances. They have all their bases in our countries. They are listening to us, and they are watching us. So we don't have freedom. For them, they are protecting their countries, and in case we start any war, because their bases they are in our countries, we are the first casualties. So thank you so much, and God bless you. Have a great week.
Thank you, Ronyo. You have a very interesting name for my community. And I wonder how the Chinese are very interesting people. They are funding us, but they think we are animals. We'll need to figure that out. Marabu Stokes?
Yeah, so in my short career, I have performed in Addis Ababa, in Rwanda, in Uganda, Tanzania, and I have a lot of friends there. And some of them today send me messages asking me if I am supporting this candidate simply because I'm a Kenyan. So I would like to concur with Western Shilao when he said that this position of AUC chair is just a puppet for the West. See, these things are mostly biblical. If we must say, four horsemen and pale horse, you have a white horse, you have a red horse and a black horse. You see, every person has a color even within the Bible. And we have the white horse, which is Jesus. And we have the pale horse, which is Muhammad. And we have the red horse, which is the Indians, the Krishna. What is the black horse? The black horse has refused to find the rider of the horse. And all the time we go looking for all these other riders of the white horse, of these other horses. And this is what is going to plague Africa forever. The EUC, I really must appreciate the performance of Raila Odinga today. I think he has done exceptionally. I did not expect him to overperform. But let me remind you that there is a mischief within the voting of the AUC. If nobody garners the 35 votes, then it becomes open to any other member. Remember that if they go to vote and nobody garners 35 votes, then it is open to any other people. From there, Tanzania can bring new people, Uganda can bring new people, and all this the thing starts afresh. That is something that most people don't tell you. Lastly, let me say this. I had a colleague the last time that Raila was in Rabat in Morocco, and they were talking about his stand against the Western Sahara independence from Algeria. And such issues are becoming so pertinent in this election. The stance that William Ruto has taken in the Sudan issue, supporting the Sudanese defense forces against these other forces. Such stance are becoming so integral in this voting. And some people are trying to push this voting. Remember, it is the presidencies that vote. So at the end of the day, we have to realize that this is not just a simple issue like how we vote our elections in Kenya. When we say that you have ODM and what, and it's a two-horse race, there's so many other things that come into play, including Western influences and the presidency in United States that has just come up. If you're not popular to the West, if you're not popular to America, you will fail despite being the most popular candidate. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Marabu Stock. The beauty about our space, and I was actually even shocked that somebody said we are Raila space. Far from it. We still don't have a prize yet. And at the same time, we believe that this is a place to have conversations where you have your opinion, somebody else has it. As long as you do it within confines of respect, we don't have a problem. We rectify each other, we learn from each other. That said, we are planning a conference for 2025 in the month of March. Everything is afoot, and we're in a good position. We'd like to have as many of you join us, and it is important that we do so to have a situation where all of us are able to talk to each other, see each other in person, and also be able to grow and get to talk about our country, come up with solutions that are practical and doable. And we'll do the conference in the month of March, and it will be happening. It's a different kind of conference, and I keep repeating this. We do not have people addressing, making speeches and then having other people sitting there and being lectured and being told stuff. This is where everybody interacts with the other, and we'd love to see something come out of that. Eli will pitch for that better. I am in charge, but Eli is good at marketing. So I would like to allow Western to speak. Western, I would not wish to limit you, but I would like to say that at least 4 minutes maximum. And the reason is, I want to be your student in class and give you a hard time. So find a way to make sure that I have a master's class in your school. That would really help, so that we can have these conversations without us limiting each other. Welcome, Western. Give your final remarks.
Thank you so much, Obed. Obed, one thing I wish to say is that the African Union is modeled on the European Union. And as usual, African leaders mimic without understanding the philosophy. So what they have is an intergovernmental organization bringing together different nation states, but it has failed to transform into a supranational organization. A supranational organization like the EU means that EU member states have surrendered part of their sovereignty to the EU. So the example is, if a British citizen is not satisfied with the ruling by the British courts, can go to the, no, before they have left, you can talk of France and what have you. If they are dissatisfied with the ruling of a French court, they can go to the European Court of Justice. And when the European Court of Justice makes a ruling, France has to abide by that ruling. We don't have that. You can see the Mother Karua, I don't know, they went to nothing. So there's still absolute sovereignty in Africa. And you cannot achieve integration, whether it's political, whether it's economic, whether it's about infrastructure, until member states surrender part of their sovereignty. We have not done that. So you've got Pan-African Parliament in South Africa, you've got all these things that look like bodies affiliated to the European Union, but in name, just nominally, not in substance. That's one thing. And these African leaders are not willing to do that. Museveni will not allow the African Union to have a say in how he runs Uganda. That will not happen. In Ethiopia, they won't do it. William Ruto will not do it in Nairobi. Secondly, AU began on a false start because its founding leaders, all of them, they fell short of the AU norms and principles, whether it's Thabo Mbeki in South Africa, whether it's Obasanjo in Nigeria, whether it's Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, whether it's Bouteflika in Algeria or Abdoulaye Wade in Senegal. All of them were compelled to leave power ignominiously, contrary to the AU principles. So even those who sat and thought that they could turn OAU into something else, they failed to abide by AU norms and principles. And that has continued to undermine the efficacy and optimal performance of the OAU. Vis-a-vis the debate, I put my money, as I've said consistently, on the Djibouti candidate because of the geopolitics favor him as opposed to the Kenyan candidate, Raila Odinga. That is it. One, I just give you one example. Nairobi will be holding France Africa Summit next year. The first time that summit will be held outside of a Francophone country. Kenya is an Anglophone.
Western, this is your student telling you.
Yes.
Your time is
Let
up,
me land.
So I'll give you a minute to conclude.
Yes. Land. Even, I'm sure some of the former French colonies find it extremely bizarre that whereas they're moving outside of the French orbit, Kenya is going into the French orbit. That kind of schizophrenia, as far as geopolitics is concerned, will highly likely cost Kenya come next year. So it will have nothing to do with how Raila Odinga has performed domestically. It will have everything to do with how disastrously Nairobi has performed diplomatically, continentally and globally. Thank you, Obed.
Thank you, Western. And I think partly, I actually agree with you that Nairobi has hobnobbed and really done a very bad, in terms of foreign policy, it is how not to do foreign policy. And we can have a conversation around this. We've talked about this before, but the truth is, from the onset, the Western Sahara issue, how we've talked about other countries, diplomacy. If anybody needs to study how not to do diplomacy, what Nairobi has done, I think for a long time should be talked about. If I will allow you, and I'm not going to give you a time limit as well, but I give you maximum 3 minutes so that we conclude this space, but it's been a very interesting conversation.
Thank you. 3 minutes. Wow. I would start by saying when it comes to foreign policy, I think it's good for all of us when we engage in these discussions, at least to familiarize ourselves with the, you know, the debates and the facts that are, and the conversations that are taking place, so that we don't come and say things here that we are not so sure of. And it's okay if you're not sure about something, you can say, I'm not sure about that, I can go and confirm, but this is my, rather than presenting a front that is not actually factual. There are key issues that I've picked up from the conversation. One is the issue of the Western Sahrawi. The African Union Commission, the 55 member states, sat in Addis Ababa and formally recognized Western Sahrawi as an independent country from Morocco. So it's not about whether Kenya endorsed or not. When the African Union takes that position at the AUC, that is the position of the African continent. So it is not a William Ruto thing. It is not a Museveni thing. It is not a B sitting in Addis Ababa that has recognized Western Sahrawi. No, it is the 55 heads of state in Africa that have recognized the issue of the Sahrawi. Why is it being dribbled down to William Ruto? One, it's because he is vocal. He is the one who's been, advocating for this thing. Number two, he has made a lot of missteps, especially when he came in as president. And luckily he managed to change course. Number three, it's because he's been most vocal about reforming the African Union Commission. The other thing also is because Kenya has a very deep penetration in terms of digital connectivity. We are on the internet, we are on YouTube, we are on spaces. We can literally, just as one country, make one subject trend in the continent because we have that kind of, digital access and connectivity. So let us try and see all these things in totality and holistically before we form a judgment. Today's debate, I will agree with most of our speakers that to me, there is no clear winner. But I am happy that actually the differences between the candidate of Kenya and the candidate of Djibouti, they've come out and now we can be able to see them in person. Raila is astute, he is political, he can sit at the table with the heads of state and he can actually have a conversation. To me, the Djibouti candidate comes out as someone you can call in an organization as an employee or a head of state, but he cannot be the CEO of that organization. So for me, the differences are clear, and we will see what the heads of state will do. The winner will come out in February next year when the votes are cast. Now, the other point I wanted to put across is, one of the speakers here said that, first of all, let's make it clear that it's the heads of state, the presidents, that are going to vote. What I say, what Obed says, what Eli says can shape the discussions, but at the end of the day, we're not going to vote in the African Union. We're just going to have to wait and see what the results will look like. It's a secret ballot, so we'll not be able to tell that Museveni voted for Kenya or Djibouti. That's not here or there. When it comes to peace and security, what's happening in Sudan, it's concerning everybody. What we need to know is that the belligerent parties in Sudan, none of them came into power democratically. You would remember that the president of Sudan was overthrown, and then these two belligerents came into power, and then they disagreed, and now they're fighting. So none of them actually is legitimate. So we cannot come here and say, siding with one faction vis-a-vis siding with the other one.
Have a minute to
Good.
conclude.
So when I learned this, Mark, is what I'm happy that what has happened today is now Kenyans and Africa at large, people are now interested in what's happening at our regional body. We are now interested at the intrigues and the dynamics that happen, when it comes to these multilateral organizations. And I think we're at a good space because now Kenyans are kindly having, a bit of an understanding of what's happening to AUC. So when you say you're supporting Mahmoud or you're supporting Raila, today, now we have seen what actually we are for or what we are against for. I land it there, Albert.
Thank you so much, Eve. I would like to thank everyone who's taken time to come to the space. it's always an interesting space. And in terms of whenever we're talking about issues Africa, I love the geopolitics and the intrigues around it. And this has come to the fore. And the beautiful thing that we're talking about is Kenyans tend to find a way to make matters interesting. And I'm sure the continent was watching, because partly Kenyans are actively talking and pushing the agenda of we don't want our candidate to win, we want somebody else. I saw Djibouti were also saying they don't want their candidate, they want Raila to win. Interesting dynamics.
Are you sure they were from Djibouti? Because Kenyans are capable of becoming Djibouti if need be.
I hear what you're saying and I know what you're thinking, but it's possible. Kenyans can be Djiboutians. I don't know if that's what they're called, but Djiboutis. So that said, it is beautiful when you start to have people interested in matters that are affecting them. Because if you do not participate, then you're the meal in that. And so as it stands, we must take interest in the politics that are going on in the country, the dynamics of leadership and governance within ourselves. But at the same time, we also have to start looking at ourselves as global citizens who must make a contribution to how the world becomes. It's become a global village by virtue of technology plus other things. And that way, whatever happens here is also replicated or shown somewhere, or the consequences of whatever happens somewhere has an implication here. So it is important to keep abreast with what's going on and understand where you fit in and the dynamics that come with it and what can be done. It is obvious when you look at it, the younger generation in most of the African continent is becoming unsettled, and they're not comfortable with what they've been given, which is a good thing. But we also need to accept that there are other old heads that have an understanding and have a similar agenda and desire to see the country do better. So even when we want to agitate and say only Gen Zs and everybody else, we need everybody on deck so that we can make a difference, because this is a country we're building for all of us. And as it goes, most of the time, young people are the people who make change. One, they're strong, they're dynamic, and they have time. So we have an opportunity, many of us who are young here, and the older ones. I like the way Redemptor likes saying, she's a storyteller. She has seen a bit of many Christmases. So she still believes and she has the spirit of a Gen Z. And that's what I think everybody else wants to see. So let's make a positive difference. Let's wish for the best. The presidents will vote. They tend to always support one who thinks like them. We'll wait and see whether it's Raila or it's Djibouti Mahmoud, or the gentleman from the one that Eli cannot say. So I would like to end it there and thank you, everyone. Have a lovely weekend. Eli, are we having Sunday school? You'll tell us, and that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Obed, as a good student, I admit when I can't do it right. But also, I go and research. That gentleman from Madagascar is former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and his name is His Excellency Richard James Randimandarato. Ebu rudi after me. Yo jina hata huwezi isema. That's why
Randimandarato. I'm a good student.
that's why even the moderators were avoiding his name. Even Raila Odinga said Richard, avoided the second name. A difficult time when they have to sign out and say, speaking at the assembly.
People from Madagascar are related to people from New Zealand, probably, because they tend to have very la names and something like that. That's why it's hard for us. You're not used to such.
Definitely, it has something to do with the big ocean that we share in common. But of course, the candidates were Excellency Richard James Randimandarato, former Foreign Affairs Minister, Madagascar. We also had candidate from Kenya, His Excellency Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister Kenya, and actively involved in the opposition politics, should I say in the broad-based government. We also had in the debate, His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Minister Foreign Affairs, Djibouti. Question is, who among these candidates is going to make it to the chair at the AUC once the election happen? And of course, these elections will be decided on by a secret ballot, not only with what you guys have been saying, oh, hamutaki, ama aende. The head of states will be deciding. All they need to do is secure 36 votes. And voila, comes from Chad, either to Kenya, Madagascar, or Djibouti. We'll be looking forward to that election come 2025. Having said that, we want to appreciate all of you that made time to be here, our speakers, listeners, contributors in the chat section. It's always a pleasure listening and sharing with you when we have our spaces. Obed, somebody asked about the upcoming conference for Mizani in 2025 in the month of March. And they were suggesting and asking you, is it going, can you push it to May? Guess what? I have an answer for them. Hapana jaribu kwa sababu the conference is going to be hosted in the month of March, courtesy of Mizani 254 Court FM and other affiliate members who are willing to come on board. You can sign up by simply going on our website, mizani254.org, and go in the contact us section, write us an email of interest telling us you love to be part of this conference. We'll be looking into thematic areas of purpose-driven leadership. Let's have an understanding. Let's have a conversation. Let us understand why leadership fails or prospers and what are the missing ingredients that can make Kenya and possibly the rest of Africa thrive when it comes to matters leadership. Looking forward to seeing all of you in Nairobi, Kenya, come 2025. Even as we try to sign out, yes, you've been asked about the conversation of Sunday. We're looking to have our final Sunday schooling event that will be happening this Sunday. We'll definitely be having a political conversation. And on Monday, we'll be having a different talk again until the 23rd, I believe. So that is the last Monday, unless I'm mistaken. But we have a lot of content lined up for you, even as we bid you good night for tonight. Western, I see your hand is up. Unataka kujaribu?
Yeah, Eli, kuna kitu moja niseme, if come February, none of the candidates manages to secure 2/3, they will have to postpone the elections for 6 months. That means Musa Faki will continue serving for 6 months until they canvass enough support so that when those elections are held subsequently, it's imperative that the AU Commission chair secures 2/3 of the votes cast by the heads of state and government. So if we don't get an outright winner, the whole exercise will be postponed for 6 months.
Let's find out what happens come February and if we don't get the ultimate winner. I'm definitely looking forward to that and many other intrigues that have been happening around the continent. And to all of you who are joining your loved ones and family members, kama ulikuwa umeenda ng'ambo, kuna baridi, please run Kenya, joto imeanza kujaa. Don't stay in cold countries. We have warm country called Kenya. The people are warm. the tourism is great. And just to make it even like a cherry on top of the cake, we struggle, yes. We fight, yes. But we are one Kenya, one people, under the umbrella of love. Having said that, I can't wait to see you on Sunday. Please make an opportunity and time to join us. And I leave you with a great song from one gentleman called Iani Nisherehe.
Yes. Gachagua ndio alitumwa akafanya hizo vitu. So kama Gachagua ni mouthpiece ya huyu jamaa, alikubali bidding ya huyu jamaa anamwambia fanya hivi, na anaenda anafanya. So huyo jamaa huyo ndio unaniambia uko na yeye. Yaani huyo jamaa ambaye alitumwa aende avuruge mambo huko Central kwenu, ndio unasema uko na yeye, unakufa na yeye, unasema
mimi pahali Gachagua ataenda nitaenda, nitakufa na yeye. Mimi siwezi kupaduka.
Njeri sijui ni nini hii. I don't know what this radicalization came from Gachagua inawapeleka wapi. Na nimewambia hii ni hewa tu. Na Gachagua by next year hakuna mahali atakuwa nasema kitu.
Ikiwa ni upepo wacha ipepe.
Masimba kama sisi vijana masimba, na pia unajua sisi masimba tuko.
Film na Sara. Kile tunaomba sahihi ndio tunafanya aje. Zile problem tuko nazo sahihi ndio tuna handle mambo namna gani. Mambo ya Gachagua, mambo ya Uhuru, hiyo ni bygone. Hakuna kitu amekalia.
Hebu niwaulize, si Gachagua alitoka? Kwani hebu niwaulize, Gachagua alitoka. Saa hii kutoka, uchumi iko wapi? Mambo inaharibika, kina ndani, kina nini, kina hospitali. Munauliza Gachagua nini? Gachagua si alitolewa, akae mjionee na macho. Hata sijui tunaongelelea Gachagua nini. Huyo ni damu yetu. Na nitamfanyia, na sitaki pesa yake. Nitamfanyia
mimi nasimama president. Utanisupport
Jerry.
Yes, my sister. I'm also Jerry. Kindly,
my name.
Yeah, wacha tujaribu tuchague mtu hajawahi kuwa na makashifa. Tutafute kama Omutata.
Thank you.
Ulisikia yule mama alikuwa anaongea kwa soko, yule mama, na ni mama wa soko huyo mama anaongea na ujasiri. Tuache mambo ya Gachagua, tuache tuseme ati Gachagua alifanywa ama alifanya. Hii yote ni cartel. Those are the most corrupt people. Please Jerry, for now, wacha tusiangalie ati alifanyiwa. Yes, alifanyiwa. Hata by the way walikuwa watu wote. But let's look at change. We start from the ground. Tuanze na yani hao watu wote tuwaweke kando. Tuanze na very very new faces. Tuone kama hatutapeleka nchi yetu mbele. Please.
Wacha niongezee kitu kingine. Nataka niongezee kitu kingine. Nataka niulize Njeri, umeona kitu imefanyika Nyandarua na kitu imefanyika Migori. Hizo ni county zimeachana sana kwa kilometers. Kama vijana wa Migori wamekataa speech ya Ruto isomwe.
Tunaendanga mahali ati Raila ameenda hapa, tunaenda
usitumie hiyo jina hapa watu.
Let us support new faces.
Withdraw that. Yangu ni hii. Ngoja. Mumute. One by one. Na wasema aje, Migori, angalia Migori, Njeri mdogo huyu, Njeri mkubwa huyu Sera. Angalia Migori kitu yenye imefanyika na kitu yenye imefanyika Nyandarua. Vijana Nyandarua wamekataa speech ya Ruto isomwe. Migori wamekataa speech ya Ruto isomwe. Kwa nini huoni wewe hiyo Kenya moja? Wewe unaangalia Gachagua. Kwa nini wewe huoni hiyo Kenya? Sera.
Yes. Nakusikia.
Nakuuliza swali mzuri sana hapa na nataka unijibu. Kuna vijana Migori County leo wamekataa speech ya Ruto isomwe. Kuna vijana Nyandarua County wamekataa speech ya Ruto isomwe. Achana na Embu na Kirinyaga kwenye watu walikataa kujitokeza. Kwa nini wewe huoni hiyo Kenya yenye inatengenezwa na vijana wenye wako Migori na wenye wako Nyandarua? Hauoni hiyo?
Hiyo wamefanya vizuri sana. Hiyo tuko kitu kimoja. Sikatai.
Sasa wewe huoni hiyo Kenya yenye vijana wanataka kutengeneza wewe?
Jerry, tusiende na emotion.
Wacha watengeneze. Siedi na.
Please.
Siedi.
We are looking for
Unajua ile shida tuko nayo kama sisi kama wa Kenya ni hii. Siasa ya ukabila ndio itatumaliza. Na mimi kuna ile siku host nilikokuambia hapa, wakati tutasimama kidete kama wananchi kivyetu na viongozi wakuje hata kwetu na tukatae hata kwenda kwa mkutano zao, ndio Kenya itabadilika. Lakini tukiwa na hii notion ya sera, hatutasonga mbele.
Mtata ako mbali, ako kiasi kuingia nini president. Saa hii hawezi. Hii bado. Mimi nasema Mtata anakuja bado, saa hii ako bado. Si mimi niko hapa.
Who is more competent?
Ukweli niwaambie ukweli. Mimi ni mwenye siasa na mimi najua ukweli. Na wachani niwaambie ukweli. Ukweli na ufua ule.
Hata mimi ni wa siasa na ninajua.
I can predict. Kwa maana tuko kwa hii platform.
Mtaka anakuja. Wachani tumlee akuja, anakuja.
Watu wote wenye unaona wako kwa hii platform, hawa ni watu wa siasa.
Wacha akuje my brother.
Ndio maana unaona wanachagua hapa hawako kwa chai. Sasa sisi tunakwambia ukweli. Na uende uambie watu wengine kama wewe wenye wanakuunga mkono. Waambie hivi. Sisi vijana tunaunganisha hii nchi na tunatengeneza Kenya mpya.
Ujua kitu kwa Ruto juu ya kuchaguana na emotion Njeri.
Mimi si kuchaguana huko. Mimi hata siongelelea.
Unajua kuna kitu Sara, Madam Sara, listen kidogo, tuende na order at least tuongee kitu ieleweke. Iko hivi, kile naelewa kuna watu wengine hapa, mtu akishakula pesa, mfano mtu amekula pesa ya Gachagua, hatujui wewe umetoka wapi na Gachagua. We cannot blame you. Maybe pia wewe umepoteza kitu kwa Gachagua. So wewe kura yako ni moja, unaweza endelea na msimamo wako, tunakuheshimu, lakini usivuke mpaka mfano kudharau sisi. Sisi ni wale watu tunaona nchi imefika mahali fulani na kuongoza imeongozwa nao mabwenyenye wote. Hakuna mahali wametuelekeza. That's why tunataka a young leader, a youth, mtu mwenye atakataa corruption. Unasikia? Mtu mwenye atakataa corruption. Hatuna ukabila. Shida yetu ni Kenya ibadilike.
Gachagua ni product ya Moi.
So hakuna haja ukuje ufikirie kama sisi tuko hapa hatujielewi. Gachagua ni Moi na tutaki wao wazee wa kwenda nyumbani. Hata Raila pia aende. Tunataka damu mpya.
Hata alikuwa kwa serikali ya Uhuru.
Shida yetu itakuwa ni Kenya. Si mkikuyu.
Ninaambia Njeri hata kidogo ungetuambia Martha Karua tungekupa sikio. Gachagua.
Si mbaya.
Mother doesn't subscribe to tribal politics. But you guys, sisi wote ni wa
Mimi naomba
Doni kupandisha hujatuma request.
Naomba kuongea kidogo
sawa.
Niko nasema hivi. Kera Njeri. Problems zile ziko na Wakenya ni zimetengeneza na political class from time immemorial kuanzia tuanze kupata uhuru. The families zile ambazo zimekuwa katika political class ndio zimeleta problem zote. Ndio wamejaribu kutake over everything in this country. Mpaka zile parastato ambazo sasa zinauzwa zinanunuliwa still the same wanajizia wenyewe. Wao ndio wanajipatia opportunities. Na hao jamaa wanajaribu kucontrol everything. Sasa tusipotoa watu kwa hivyo vitu ambao wamekalia kuanzia hata UMCA hata wasipate mpaka government, national government yote wale iwe ni kitu safi yote, problems za Kenya zitakuwa solved immediately. Hazitakaa mwaka mmoja tu zitakuwa everything is solved. Lakini political class wakirudi, mimi nakwambia hao ndio wanatukanyagia chini. Hao ndio wataki watu wafanye kile wanafanya. Hao nataka waendelee ku immense wealth ya generation to generation. Bila kufanya hivyo mamia hakuna mali tutoe.
Njeri, umeridhika?
Niko hapa.
Umeridhika?
Bado siwezi. Bado.
Sawa, kaka
Siwezi kulipa.
Kaka hapo basi. Wacha niongee na huyu niongee na Kode Kenya kidogo atuambie siku yake ameiona aje. Alafu niongee na Njeri mdogo juu najua yeye ni mkubwa kuliko ule Njeri mwingine. Ajaribu kukuconvince. Hata kama atakuongelesha lugha ya mama akuonyeshe ile giza yenye mnataka kuelekea.
Unajua, wacha nikwambie tu kitu kimoja.
Asante sana Dawak. Okay. Ongea Njeri.
Kitu kidogo ndio nilikuwa nasema. Unaona Uhuru alikuwa ameambiwa aende nini? Aende huko Ruto alikuwa. Hakuenda. Kwa nini? Kwa ajili ya obvious. I know. Alikuwa aliko. Si amekataa, hataki vita. Kwa ajili ameona sasa hataki. Wacha apoe vile alikuwa amepoa. Wacha akae. Na hiyo siwezi kuingia. Akiingia hapo mimi siko. Mimi nilimfuata vile aliniambia tuchague baba, nikachagua baba. This round akiingia hapo mimi siko na siseme sijawahi kumwambia. Nimemwambia asiingie, asijaribu, wacha akae ajiangalilie. No. Tunapelekwa kwa baba hapo.
Okay. Okay, Dawak. Unajua mimi hata simlaumu Njeri. Njeri ndo watu ambao tunataka wakae kwa platform kama hii so that waweze kuelewa ni wapi tuko na ni wapi tunaelekea. Unajua kuna watu they cannot see beyond Mount Kenya. You know, Mount Kenya politics has affected them so much to a point whereby they don't see the larger Kenya as to where we are taking the direction that the politics is taking. Now, ukiwa mtu ambao wewe una-analyze politics na vitu ambavyo unaona ama vitu unaangalia kwa habari, utapotea sana. Who knew weeks before uko nyuma, who knew that Uhuru Kenyatta na Ruto ataenda kumtembelea Uhuru Kenyatta nyumbani waongee mambo yao? Who knew that? No one anticipated that. Ni nani alijua kwamba Raila ataingia kwa serikali? No one anticipated that. Njeri, tunakwambiaje? In short, sitaki like nichukue muda wako mwingi kukuelezea mambo mengi. Nataka tu nikwambie kuna kabila mbili hapa Kenya apart from the 32 tribes, 52 tribes. Kuna kabila mbili hapa Kenya tu. Kuna kabila ya masikini na kabila ya matajiri. Na hii kabila ya matajiri imeshikana watu ambao wanaonyesha nyinyi masikini kwamba hawako pamoja, but in real sense wako pamoja. Uhuru, hakuna tofauti ya Uhuru, hakuna tofauti ya Raila, hakuna tofauti ya Gachagua, hakuna tofauti ya Ruto, hakuna tofauti ya hawa watu Kalonzo. Hawa watu ni wamoja. Kitu ambacho makosa ambayo tukafanya sisi kama Kenyans. Nani Wamalwa mute kidogo ama utoke kwa room ya watoto. Makosa kubwa ambayo tunaweza tukafanya sisi kama Wakenya ni kupigia kura mtu ambaye haezi akamchallenge Ruto, haezi akamchallenge Uhuru, haezi akamchallenge Raila. People are moving away from those kind of politics za kingpins ama area chiefs wa communities. Ati hii Kenya, for us to have a president, the president must get support from a kingpin of a certain community. Ati tunasema ati sahi vita ambavyo viko Mount Kenya, and that is what you are trying to explain here. You are in a dilemma. Amujui between Uhuru Kenyatta na Rigathi Gachagua ni nani ndo kusema in Mount Kenya. That is what brings the confusion. Na hiyo card ambayo inachezwa ya kuficha kumaanisha kwamba ati coming general elections, whoever wants to get the vote from Mount Kenya has to pass through Gachagua ama has to pass through. Those are the things that Gen Zs they are moving away from that. Na defining factor ya coming general election, usifikiri ati kila kitu itakuwa inafanywa like itakuwa normal business. Hapana. tuna strategize, tunaenda kwa ground, tunaelimishana na tunatokana na hizo kasumba mbaya ambazo zimetuweka pali tuko sahihi as the people, kwa sababu tumewasikiliza nyinyi kama mama zetu, mnasema nyinyi ni mama mboga. Tumewasikiliza kama baba zetu, but tumeona kwamba nyinyi hamutaki kuachana na kasumba za zamani, na sasa people are adapting ways of making this country move forward from the political elites ambao wametoka kwa hizi shida ambazo tuko. Njeri.
Yes. Niambie.
Kama ni Jerry mimi unataka niongee?
Which Jerry? Ongea tu.
Oh, nilikuwa nataka
Jerry mkubwa ongea.
Jerry mkubwa ni Sera. Lilian si mzee kama wewe.
Haya, Sera wacha aongee. Kuna kitu nitawaambia tukiwa wazazi. Sisi tunasikiaga sana wasichana. Na wasichana wakikuja waseme kula mamu, weka hapa, ndio mamu ataweka. Vijana unajua mkiwa huko nje ni mgoka kukunywa, mkiingia kwa nyumba ni sisi tutasema. So muangalie ground, wasichana wamama ndio kusema kwa nini si wafichi. Nyinyi mkienda kufanya zenyu huko mkiingia kwa nyumba ni sisi tunasema, utaona. Hiyo ndio ninawaambia, na ninasema jensi tuchukue kura, sio kuongea na nini na mdomo. Tuingie na tuonyeshane kula kila mahali. So this round sio ya mchezo, sio kucheka sahi. Hatutalala, watu watalala huko. Sasa sahi ni kubaya, lakini tusiseme ni kubaya alafu vile naona kama tutaibwa. Watu wakishikana tujiangalilie.
Unajua Sara, ngoja, unajua Sera Njeri, wewe unataka kwa mfano candidate wako ambao Kenya is a democratic country, kila mtu ako na right ya kuchagua yule kiongozi ambaye anamtaka, lakini nikikuuliza tu Njeri kwa mfano,
nasema
ngoja
muingie,
nakuuliza tu mbele ya hawa watu, nikikwambia unitajie vitu 5 ambavyo wewe unaona kwamba Gachagua anaweza kufanya kubadilisha hii nchi kushinda pale tuko sahihi, vitu 5 ambavyo Gachagua anaweza kufanya, unitajie.
Nimesema hivi kitu moja, Gachagua hata akiwa haendi kwa debe, vile ataniambia ndivyo nitafanya.
Kwa nini wewe huwezi fanya vile unaweza taka?
Kwani wewe unabebewa akili na Gachagua?
Wewe unataka.
Una akili yako ya
wacha nibebe. Niko kwa yeye damu, wacha anibebe.
Unajua vitu vingine unaongea ni kama na kwa hivyo hata wewe hakuna hata nyumba yako kuna mtu anakusimamia, huwezi simamisha nyumba yako venye wewe unataka. Vitu zingine you use your common sense, unaona venye Kenya inaenda alafu unaanza kusema akiniambia niende hivi. That is why the country is failing. Angalia Wajaluo wanaendaga venye Raila anasema, angalia Wakikuyu wanaendaga venye Uhuru anasema. We have to
mimi hata unitukane ubwa siwezi kukasirika kwa ajili mimi ni kiongozi.
But it seems like wewe tu venye
Lilian, just a minute. Let's engage
her. Watu ndio wanaharibingi dunia.
Unajua ukiongea sasa uongee kibaya ni kama umelipwa. Si uongee vizuri, sio ati uniongereshe hivyo, sio vizuri. Tuongee vizuri tusaidiane.
Kwa hivyo hata akikwambia uende uchague Ungo utachagua.
Unasema nimebebewa hakili kwa nini?
Utachagua Ruto na unaona venye amepeleka.
Yes. Katikati hapa kuna waka.
Okay. Nimesikia conversation na ninasikia nikaa kwanza ni wanawake wawili ndio wana try to convinceana and I'm one of them. So what I would tell Sarah, unajicontradict kwa sababu you're the same person mwenye unasema ati mama akiongea anasikika kuliko mwanaume. Right now I wish ungekuwa unasema ninatetea mama kama mimi, useme maybe like Mother Karua, tungekuwa at least tunaona there is a sense you're making. But huwezi sema unasema ati mama anasikizwa and at the same time unatetea mwanaume mwingine, na huyu mwanaume unatetea amekuwa kwa government zote, there is nothing amekuwa akifanya ati inaweza saidia Kenya. Na for real, hata ukiona amejiseparate na Ruto, these people, they still have something they do in common. Kama wamekuwa wakiiba kila mtu na njia zake, mtu ni lazima atajaribu kuprotect wizi yake. So mimi ningetaka kuambia Sarah, please, wacha kutuhaibisha. I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial. But I would want to tell you, you are misleading these young people, because you are standing on a stand of people that are wenye wana stand ya ule mtu mwenye the young people they are seeing hana future now. Sisi tunahesabu miaka to retire. These young people, the 20s, now it is their time. We are supposed to be the one showing them an example, not telling them ati mimi nitasimama na huyu, na ule unataka kusimama naye ni muongo kabisa. Please, wacha kutuletea nini kwa group. There is somebody that did the same thing. Instead ya tuongea zile vitu zinasaidia Kenya, alitudistract tukashinda tukiongelea about sijui ama tulikuwa unaongelea bado Gachagua ama the guy that stopped Ruto ati anatetea Ruto anasema ati government favors the agony of talking about Gachagua and anybody amekuwa kwa government. Let us have a new government for our young people. Tunataka watoto wetu, when they are walking on the streets of Nairobi, they are walking majestically because they know they have leadership that is leading them the right way. Hatutaki mtu mwenye akiingia kwa government after one year they are complaining hakuna jobs, hakuna nini. Please, let us lead these kids the right way. Wacha kumislead watoto. I'm done.
Sarah, do you have anything to respond? Lilian.
Yeah. I'm here. You know, the reason why nimeongea, si kawaida mtu kuongea hivyo na hasira, lakini ukiona, the thing is, Gachagua has been there in the government of Moi. Gachagua has been there in the government of Uhuru. Gachagua has been there in the government of Ruto. Yes, alifanyiwa makosa kutolewa kwa kiti na alichaguliwa na watu, na hiyo tuna understand na tunamhurumia. Lakini sio ati juu tulimhurumia venye alifanywa iwe ati ndio inafanya ati tukue so emotional. Juu hiyo ilikuwa ni njia moja ndio Wakikuyu, kura za Wakikuyu zigawanyike. Hata Gachagua angekuwa kwa serikali ya Ruto, hakuna, there would be no difference. Na bado sasa angekuwa, tuseme kama Gachagua hangekuwa impeached, angekuwa anasema atapelekwa na mwelekeo gani in the first place.
Hata kitu ingine naweza taka niambie Sarah, sisi wote tulikuwa tunasema kufa dereva, kufa makanga. Kwa nini mkubali makanga venye ameuliwa, yenye mkatee tuwe dereva?
Tena amebadilisha
nini? But you guys, to be honest, we all agree that hatutaki Ruto. Sindio? Lakini sasa mbona usungane na sisi? Hiyo ndio point yenye mimi nawauliza wazazi wetu na
wewe. Kwa hivyo hata Gachagua akisema turudishe Ruto, Sara atarudisha Ruto.
No, the problem I'm having with us is that we know exactly what we don't want, but we don't know what we want.
What do you want?
And it has always been that. Kwa sababu gani? When it comes to election, even nimesikia Lilian akisema ati Gachagua aliondolewa kimakosa, tunamwonea huruma. Hakuna cha huruma, because no one ati people voted for Gachagua. People never voted for Gachagua.
No.
People never.
I'm just saying, I don't sympathize with Gachagua. That is how people are taking.
No. Listen to my point. Listen to my point. You will understand what I'm saying. People never voted for Gachagua. People never voted for Ruto. People voted against Uhuru and Raila. The vote against Uhuru and Raila went to Ruto. Doesn't mean that people voted for Raila. It doesn't mean that people voted for issues, and it has always been like that. So now there is a pattern that has been created by the political class kuwafanya nyinyi sympathize now in their own issues ambao wanapigania mambo ya
let's keep tapping the screen.
Wanapigania mambo za deal zao za Adani, walirushana huko manini, mama corruption and all that. He has always been saying it on the press, kwa media. Those are the issues. Wamekosania deals, and you are here sympathizing with them. We know exactly what we don't want. Hatutaki Ruto, but the question is, when it comes to what we want, we differ on opinions. Sasa hiyo ndo shida. Can we unite in what we want? Tuseme hii ndo kitu tunataka, huyu ndo mtu tunataka, and we push for that agenda.
Hello.
Kwa sana Vincent.
Mimi naweza sema hivi. Unajua sisi wa Kenya mara mingi hao wanasiasa huwa wanatutumia sana. Mozo akijua yeye ndio kingpin. Like now tulikuwa tunajua Uhuru ni adui wa Ruto. Si kila mtu alikuwa anajua hivyo hapo nyuma. Lakini sasa wakati uliona wakisalimiana, walikuita kwa hiyo mkutano waseme kila mtu ni
Hakuna mtu alituita? Hakuna? Vincent, unapotea. Dongi utuma request. Vincent.
Dawak.
Yes,
Dawak.
Victor.
Okay, I thank God ile statement nilikuwa naleta, however much ilikuwa inakaa ni kama ni kicheko, watu walikuwa wanacheka. Imeleta point home.
Umeleta moto.
Yes, imeleta point home to a point yenye hata Love God amesema that the intention ni kugawa kura ya Wakikuyu, and that is true. Na mimi nimesema, and I still repeat, Gachagua is a project. But okay, tutoke kwa hii maneno ya Gachagua, tutoke kwa hii maneno ya Uhuru, maneno ya wakina Raila ama Luo. Nilikuwa nasikia mtu anasema ati Wajaluo siji wanafuata Raila. Mimi kutoka 2022 kura yangu hata sijaipea Raila. Mpaka hata nilikuwa nikiambia Madea, alikuwa anasema ni kama nampea heart pressure. Ndio mimi kwangu I believe, unaona kama sisi we are a victim of this. Imagine sisi kwetu tuko na like Victoria na sisi ndio hatuna maji. Unaona? Tunatembea distance mrefu kwenda kununua maji mtungi 40 bob. Sisi ndio tuko na lake yenye inapeleka mpaka Red Sea. Na kuna sehemu kama huku Mount Kenya, they just have rivers and they have water in every homes. What is it that is happening? Bad governance. Unaona? Hatuwezi kuwa tunakufa na ODM. Kila wakati ni ODM tunakufa nayo. Kila wakati ni ODM tunakufa nayo. Na hiyo ODM inatutumia sisi wananchi na kura yetu kutunyanyasa sisi na kukula pesa yetu. Ile kitu gani serikali imefanya? Mimi for sure sijaona. Ile kitu serikali imefanya ni kuleta ugatuzi. Ugatuzi yenye imeletwa wanaiba nayo pesa ya wananchi. Project yenye imeletwa saa hii SGR nini zote ni deni. Hakuna kitu yenye iko hapa Kenya yenye tunaweza jivunia sisi ni yetu. Na ile yetu kidogo, the government is not working. They are not for the people, they are for themselves. And for me this is again another idea. Going forward, let us elect leaders, not politicians. Tuombe Mungu atupe neema ya kujua huyu ni mwanasiasa na huyu ni kiongozi, kwa sababu hao watu wawili ni watu tofauti. Mwanasiasa anakuja kwa ulingo ya siasa kupiga siasa yake, na yeye nia yake ni apige ria na tibi ukiwa unaimba ukijibu, na hivyo tu atoke hapo. Lakini kiongozi mwenye anakuja kuongoza ndio Wakenya wanafaa sasa hivi waangalie, si mwanasiasa. So going forward, tuachane nao and let us fight these people in the government, irrespective wewe ni nani, ni mtu wetu ama ni nini.